So you guys are stuck with me today. Josh is taking a little bit of a break, but we are actually going to be working on the XJS. You may have seen our other videos, kind of tackling the quite common high idle issue, and yeah, kind of creating almost like a surging forward situation when driving the car. Our last video, we cleaned the idle air control valve, got a lot of carbon buildup on it, removed, plugged it in, the car functioned just fine. However, after a couple of days of driving, the symptoms started to come back again. One thing we've noticed with the car, and after doing some more research, basically the ECU has a temperature sensor that it's hooked up to, and it uses that with the coolant to determine if a high idle is needed, additional fuel, almost like a choke circuit when the car is cold, just to warm it up. And what we noticed with the car is the gauge on the dash is always dead cold. Unless you're stuck in traffic for 20 plus minutes, then it starts to move up towards the middle, but otherwise it's always cold. And this is kind of partnered with really bad gas mileage. So we're seeing maybe like 8 to 10 miles to the gallon with this. We don't expect great mileage, but nonetheless, that is kind of insane. So yeah, with our research, we found that basically either those coolant sensors can go bad, give a ECU a wrong reading. But as we're seeing also the dash gauge, which has its own sensor, is riding low. We think maybe it could just be something simple like the thermostat. So with all that being said, today we're going to kind of get stuck in and replace the thermostat on the AJ16. And so we're going to take you along for the journey. So in case you thought working under the hood of an XJR was bad, this is kind of the angle you got on the XJS. And of course, what we want to work on today is right up in that front corner. So yeah, this should be fun. So with that, basically our first step is we're gonna try and get this air intake tube removed. And then we're gonna come down in here and get the upper radiator hose out of the way. And we're hoping that we can just get right in here, which appears to be the thermostat housing. Remove that, let the coolant drain down enough to put the new thermostat in, and then replace it with a new one that we just purchased. It's a pretty cheap part, but as I'm sure you know, sometimes that's what it is when you're having issues. So let me work on getting this piece removed and we'll be right back. Okay, so intake tubes removed. There's just one clamp here. I did sort of unclip the air box in this just to get some more like flexibility. But yeah, the inlet tube is out. And so now we have actually pretty great access to the thermostat housing. I raised the car up about 6 inches, and that way I could put a catch pan down in here. You can kind of see it, the white plastic. So my goal here is kind of undo this guy, see how much coolant comes out, and then yeah, undo this, and let's get the thermostat out and see what's in there, if anything. All right, well, you can probably hear the dripping under here, but radiator hose, upper disconnected. We got most of it in the pan. Coolant doesn't look terrible, but I am tempted, as we've done with this car, with a lot of things, to flush the system. We did that with the brakes. We've done that with the engine oil, all with great success of just kind of making the car's drivability that much better. Kind of see there's some sort of like just little corrosions and stuff up here, so I'll probably brush all that down. But other than that, I think we're to the point where I'm gonna basically undo these thermostat housing bolts and let's see what lurks inside. So got the bolts out. They look like they have a thread sealant or something on them, or maybe they're just crusty, but 10 mils, 2 of them. The housing, yeah, it's pretty on there. So, I think every mechanic has one of these, the Persuader, but just, oh, there we go. Let's see what we got inside. So here's the thermostat. At first glance, it doesn't look too bad, a little grubby, but this could be original. However, what I noticed, see if we can catch this on video. Yeah, right there. Do you see, you can see my finger moving behind it? So, to me, that is suspicious. And when I say suspicious, I mean that because it's not closing completely, that's always going to allow basically the cold coolant from the engine to be circulating through the radiator, creating an overcooling type situation. You know, some people may think, hey, that doesn't seem like too bad of a situation, at least it's not overheating. However, in this case, you know, the symptoms we're having, the ECU is looking for coolant temperature to be up so the idle will come down. And it also is regulating the fuel management as well. So it's basically continuously running on this choke circuit, pumping fuel in there, keeping the engine idle speed up, all because of the coolant temperature being low and really never getting up to operating temperature. I'll say this isn't a guarantee, but this definitely seems like a potential culprit. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to kind of clean up the thermostat housing. I'll show you that here in a second, kind of what I'm going to do. And as I already have, you know, the coolant system open, probably going to flush it out and the radiator just because, okay, this thing hasn't been running with a thermostat that's operating correctly. You know, is there stuff clogged in the cooling system, anything like that? You know, it's already apart. Basically just got to run some fresh water through it and we'll find out, you know, if there's any blockages or any like sediment. You know, the car's from 96, so you know, anything could be in there. The coolant that came out looked fine, but you know, may as well do it as we're in there. So yeah, let's get moving. So now we have the water neck in our hands. You can kind of see this lovely corrosion all around the neck. Not too bad, but then on the side, not good, very scaly. So we're gonna take this over to the workbench and basically, you know, with a wire brush, try and clean this up so that we get a nice good seal when we put this back together. And just, you know, inside doesn't look too bad, but just make sure everything's clean. I think that gives you a better idea of what we're dealing with. You can see the, so I've pushed it with my thumb and when it returns, that's where it stops. So I'm saying that's a potential problem. So we're back over at the bench. Here's the thermostat housing. As you can see, I've kind of scrubbed this down quite a lot. It looks significantly better. It's kind of, you know, a little lumpy from the corrosion, but all the powder so far has come off. I'm gonna spend a little bit more time on it, and I need to get obviously the gasket material off the back here. For reference, a little excessive, but I have this little, let's see if we can get it in focus. Oh, maybe? Well, you get the idea. Wire wheel, there you go. Wire wheel on the end of a drill. It's not too abrasive, but it works well. I feel like, you know, when you're working with aluminum, it's better to be on the cautious side anyway. And yeah, as you can see down here, tons of scale coming off. So yeah, making good progress. I'm going to spend a little more time on this, try and get it cleaned up a little bit more and go from there. Okay, so quick update. Got the housing all cleaned, all the corrosion, kind of at least the worst of it off. And then I've cleaned the mating surface on it. So let me take you over here and we'll have a look at it. So it's a lot better. You know, not perfect. I mean, there's pretty heavy pitting in a few places, but it's, you know, all the powder and everything's gone, and I think it'll do the trick for kind of what we're working with. So yeah, let's kind of take you over here and we can look at the other side. So I've had to enable the use of this little light here, but the housing again, got all the mating surface pretty cleaned up here. Then I'll kind of wipe out the little buildup in the bottom that you can kind of see down there. But getting close to getting this new thermostat in. All right, here we go. Here we go. So pretty easily actuate the thermostat with my thumbs here. That's the one we removed. Ooh, this guy right here. And yeah, here's a new one. And yeah, it just is not moving. So Definitely pretty confident we're dealing with a failed thermostat here. So new thermostat here. This end is what's going to go into the engine block because that's where it regulates whether we are up to operating temperature or not. So we're going to come over here, and it just seats pretty nicely right there. And then it does have like a little bleeder on the top. Let's see, so you guys can see that. So I'm going to sit it like that. And now it's pretty straightforward. Just get your gasket and the housing for the thermostat neck and put that on. All right, well, I have to run and get some coolant. Definitely forgot to bring that with all the parts today, but making pretty good progress. I am feeling pretty confident that really what we're gonna end up with here is, you know, not only some fresh coolant in here, new thermostat, but that may actually solve our issue. So don't want to get ahead of myself, but it's looking promising with the symptoms that we were seeing with that thermostat. So I'm going to get some coolant, and you'll join me back here once we're topping the system back up. But hoping to have the car fired up a little bit later, take it for a test drive, and hopefully be back in business. And looking forward to kind of letting you guys know the results of this. And then we'll do a summary video separate to this. It kind of talks through a good way of diagnosing these issues, as it does seem pretty common on these AJ16 motors. So be back shortly. So we're back out here today. Gonna finish up the XJS and see if this thermostat does the trick with our idle issues. So let's recap where we got to yesterday and what we're gonna be trying to accomplish today. Here's our iconic Jag inline 6, all 4 liters of it, looking really nice and clean. If we come around here, so we got the thermostat housing on yesterday, and so really all we got to do today is get this hose back on, clamp it back up, and obviously link up the airbox assembly here, top the coolant up, and then let's give her a go. So this has been a pretty easy job, and honestly, total parts, I would say is maybe $25. So if this actually fixes our problem, I will be thrilled. So with that, let me get this hose on and start getting this coolant in, and we'll go from there. So here we go. The radiator hose is on up here, clamped down nice and tight, and you can see now there's no buildup or anything around thermostat housing, which is great. It's all nice and clean. So hopefully we have a nice seal there. And then if we come around this side, let's come over here and top the coolant reservoir up for now. My plan is, as you can see, I don't have the air intake tube in, mainly so I can check for leaks with the thermostat housing. Also going to leave the cap off of the coolant reservoir down here, just so that if there is any air that needs to come out as the thermostat opens, it can easily do that. But I think we're going to open up the bay here and start this up and see what happens. All right, well, she's running. I will say it's a really cold day here in Florida today. It's about 40 degrees, so it's definitely on its high idle circuit. Gonna let it run here for a few minutes, see if it comes up to temperature now. So I'll check back in maybe 5 minutes and we'll show you guys what's going on. All right, so the car's been running for maybe 5 minutes. Like I said, it's about 40 degrees here today, so kind of chilly for Florida. But if you remember in the beginning of the video, I stated the temp sensor, the gauge here, really always just sat at the bottom in the C section, never moved, and really, you know, we never saw the needle get up to temperature while we've owned this car. As you can see now, the car's been running, like I said, maybe 5 minutes, and it's actually looking like it's coming up to operating temperature, which is cool. Idle, when we started it from stone cold, was at 1500. It seems to be incrementally coming down now, so we're looking at about 13, and I think you can almost see the needle sinking here as well. So We're gonna let it run maybe another 5 more minutes and we'll check back and see where we land. So initial signs are looking promising. The temp gauge, as you saw, it's coming up. So I think really now, the car's a little low on gas, so I'm gonna take it down to the gas station and you know, give it a little bit of a test drive and see what that does to the idle speed. But yeah, the first signs, no leaks or anything, and then we'll come back and we'll report back, so stay tuned. Okay, so back from a test drive, got some fresh gas in the car. Overall, I would say it's running better. The slight kind of grumpiness it seemed to have before is gone, I assume, because now it runs at operating temperature. So just the 6 is running even smoother. So that's great. Temperature gauge is working, and the car is not overheating. So it's not like anything's been band-aided before, and that's why the cooling system was left open. That being said, we still have the high idle issue. When we started, the car was at 1500. As it warmed up, it did come all the way down to about 1000, but it's not going below that. And really, we're looking for about a 650, 700 RPM idle speed. So, yeah, a little bit of a bummer, but process of elimination, we will get to the bottom of this. So I'll show you what we're gonna do next. So next up, this is the coolant temp sensor that actually kind of tells the ECU what temperature the coolant's at. And this is a pigtail for it. So they go over here. You can actually see we have 2, right? So we got this guy right here. This temp sensor. The one I'm wiggling with like the little spade connector, that is actually for the gauge. And as we saw, that seems to be working fine. And this guy and the sensor, which look to be original, are the ones that the ECU's looking at for information on what the coolant temperature is, and then from there it's kind of regulating the amount of fuel and idle. So yeah, we're gonna let the car cool down. Obviously it's hot from the drive, and then yeah, remove these guys, and we'll check the coolant level too, make sure that's good, and then we'll give it another test. So I'm sure you Jag enthusiasts all understand the process of elimination with these kind of things, and you know, just kind of working through to a solution, especially with this car. Honestly, overall it's in great shape, but it sat for multiple years with very little use or none. And there's a lot of stuff that's basically original, which means, you know, it's over 25 years old. So things wear out like we saw with that thermostat, and we just have to go through and replace them until the car's running like it did when it left the factory. But the goal here is that, you know, this will be a reliable transport for whoever ends up with it next. And, you know, we have all this documented for them where they can see everything that's been done to it and be assured that, you know, this is good for many thousands of miles to come. So I'm going to leave now. Got to let the engine cool down for a couple hours really before I can get stuck back in. But I'll be back and we'll kind of do the next part of this video and see where we land. And for some of you eagle-eyed folks, yes, we got the cover off the 928. Poor thing's been sitting on a tender for way too long. You can also probably see the Viper's not in here right now. Goal is, this is gonna come out, just go for a little drive around the block here just to stretch its legs a little bit. 2023, this is getting the, what I will call infamous 25-year service. That is a complete teardown at the top end, replaces all the fuel hoses, all the rubber hoses, gaskets. It does all, you do the timing belt, water pump, everything, just because these are known to perish, and in some unfortunate cases, this cause fires. The car does have a vacuum leak right now. This is kind of what prompted that. But I do promise, I know we've been teasing it for a long time, that this car will be coming in the spotlight soon. And then the Mustang, I know Josh has shown that a few times as well. May not look like much is going on, and honestly, that's why we haven't filmed too much. But really, there's a few components that are off at a welder right now. You know, you can see the radiator is missing, inlet tubes missing, actually a chunk of the exhaust is missing too. They're doing some welding on those components for us. The goal really is that to get the XJS sorted, then this bay opens up, the Mustang is coming forward, and we're gonna get cranking on that. So I share all that just to let you know that there's a lot more in the pipeline. We're going to try and post a little more frequently in 2023. I'll let Josh share his plans for the channel as well. But we're really excited to kind of take this thing to the next level. So as always, thanks a lot for following along. And yeah, I'll be back tomorrow to kind of tackle this with the XJS, and we'll see where we land.